I'll never understand when it comes to China, and we've really gone off course from Crowder, but it's fascinating how this conversation evolves.
I want to get rid of downvotes. Yeah.
I'll never understand when it comes to China. Being a kid of the 80s, I'm older than you. We just talked about ages earlier. We always treated the Soviet Union like an enemy. We were told the communism is an evil belief. Communists don't want our best intentions. They are our enemy. We never moved our factories there, right? But when it came to China, we were like, communists are bad, but I mean, you can make all of our DVD players and our cars and now our wind turbines and our solar panels and basically everything that is sold on Amazon and 95% of our pharmaceutical industry. And I'll never understand why we got into bed with the communists, because we always knew communism was an evil belief.
Was that Nixon?
He opened up China to trade, yeah. As opposed to saying, no, they're no better than the Soviets. They look different, but they are just as evil, because communism is evil. We treated Cuba that way. We never said Cuba's bad, but you know what? Like, why don't we move all of our sugarcane production there? But we did with China, and it will always remain fascinating to me. And that is not a partisan issue, because Bush did it, Clinton did it, another Bush did it. You know, we all watched China rise. But we never had this fear of China that we did with the Russians. And people will say, "Wow, the fear of the Russians was overblown; it was exaggerated." But we believed as a country that communism was evil.
It is,
but not when it comes to China.
China's like a weird neo-communist capitalist amalgamation. Probably we're using the wrong word when we call them communists. We have
authoritarian
defaulted to authoritarian, but like maybe there's a new socio-political movement or structure that could be named, and China has enacted it.
I don't want to offend our good communist viewers by besmirching the good name of communism.
Of course, communism works locally.
Absolutely. I was kidding, but all right.
In the family, communism. In the community, socialism. In the country, capitalism.
I always put it like this: like quote. Left libertarianism, which is like communism, at its core ideology, only works when it's like a handful of people live on a farm together.
Yeah.
It's like, I picked up the eggs from the chickens. Would you like to share?
A commune.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't scale up because, that was the joke we made the other night. This is the question I was actually wondering when you mentioned, like we said, Russia, the Soviet Union was bad. China is bad, but we can still do trade with them. Who killed more people? Didn't Mao kill substantially more people?
Close to 100 million.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like
starving
almost
them,
double.
mostly.
We don't even know.
Yeah. Isn't like double what Stalin, what the Soviet Union did?
Yeah.
Let's work with them, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, he starved close to 100 million of his own people.
Pig iron. You know about the pig iron stuff?
No, I've heard of that before.
I don't know the full story, but it was like he ordered everybody to melt down their tools or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
What was that about? Like they were trying to make weapons, I guess.
They were and build their infrastructure. Yeah, and then no one had anything with which to cook or to farm or to. Same with the sparrows.
That's right. I was going to say the sparrows.
The Great Sparrow Campaign, because the sparrows were eating the wheat, and that was the biggest predator of wheat. So they were like, great, kill all the sparrows, and you would get a little badge every time you killed a sparrow, and all the kids were taught to kill sparrows to get badges until the locusts came, because the locusts,
no sparrows to eat them,
because there were no sparrows to eat them, and then something absurd like 13 million people died that year because there was no wheat, because the locusts destroyed all the wheat crops. And you say, well, this is why communists should not be ever in control.
Well, but hold on, can't you eat the locusts? I imagine you could mill them into a paste and make bread with them or something.
They tried.
Probably. But they come from above.
I will not eat the bugs. I will not live in the pod.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm not going to eat. Yeah, I'm not eating bugs.
I got no problem with eating bugs, man.
That's
As long as you can catch.
I watch these videos where it's like some dude out in the middle of nowhere and he's like all super ripped and he's like, if you want to survive in the wild, you got to figure out where to find water. And then he goes and he like drinks muddy water and then he's like, and food, and he lifts a rock and he's like eating I'm kidding. I'm half kidding. But there's a lot of these videos of like survivalists.
And dysentery.
Like, yes. Here are the bugs you can eat. Here's how you eat them. Here's how you cook them. And I'm like, I don't care about eating bugs.
When there's no other food, I will.
I mean, whatever.
Yeah, same.
Hey, you know what you do? You said, listen.
You do what you need to stay alive.
We got chickens. I brought it up earlier, but we have chickens. They walk around all day. All they do is eat bugs.
Yeah.
And then when they're old enough, they poop out an egg.
Yes.
And they eat the egg.
Yep.
I don't got to eat the bugs. I eat the egg.
There you go.
Problem solved. Were we talking about China?
Transmutation of matter, yeah.
Yeah, having all the locusts. And the problem ultimately was the command economy.
Yes.
It's the idea of communism is this utopian idea that everyone's holding hands and everyone owns everything and the factory just operates and there's no hierarchy and no leadership. And it's usually, like children and the ignorant who propose it because they don't realize what specialties are.
Yeah.
So like you have someone whose specialty is
building a Keystone pipeline as a welder with 25 years experience. And then you're told by quasi-communist John Kerry, well, you can just build a solar panel now.
Exactly. So what happens is when somebody who actually knows how the infrastructure of pipelines work is seeing all of his specialists who build pipelines, and they're told by the guy in government, make solar panels. He's like, we don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Think about how that scales up in communism. The communist government says, just have them all make solar panels. And they go, here, here, and they bang the gavel. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of people are like looking down at circuitry and photovoltaic cells, and they're like, what do I do? I plug what into what and where? And like,
that's what Mao did with the farmers, right? He took a bunch of like professors and intelligentsia and moved them out to the farms. And it was like, now you farm. And they were like, we don't know how. And then they all starved.
Yeah.
In the Soviet Union, they used to determine output by weight. So they would say, how many nails did you produce? Well, we measure output by weight. So they made really fat, heavy nails, and which are useless, right?
Yeah.
They're not any good, but they were hitting the criteria, and that is the collectivist concern I have of this administration when it comes to tomorrow. They're going to unveil a $4 trillion infrastructure and jobs plan, and who's going to $4 trillion?
How long is over how many months or years is that coming?
Oh, I have
another
no idea.
$4 trillion.
We'll see it come out tomorrow. But who are these collectivists saying, yes, this is what we need to make happen?
This democratic.
I have willed a train. We were talking about this earlier. From Miami to Seattle is on the map, and they showed you the map of going through Florida and all across the Panhandle.
Oh, the high-speed rail.
With the high-speed rail. Now, how much land they're going to have to confiscate will be absolutely fascinating. But who is this person that has decided? Is there really that much of a move from people from Miami to, probably from Seattle to Miami, because everyone's going to Florida. California's been trying for 10 years now to build this high-speed rail. They are $100 billion at price point. It's not even close to done. It's 12 years behind schedule. And the price point is so expensive that no one will be able to afford to take the train. Well, this is what happens when collectivists decide they want to be in charge of the train system, right? Vanderbilt never had this problem, and he built more darn trains in this country than anyone in the world, and somehow he made it work.
Take a look at what China's doing. They've somehow managed to use the authoritarian system to control capitalistic infrastructure, allowing them to rapidly expand their infrastructure. They have, 40,000 kilometers of high-speed rail?
Yeah.
We can't even get this one done in California.
Yeah. You know why? Because there's no environmental group suing to say, what about the spotted turtle? Mm-hmm. There is no labor group saying you cannot do this. We need to have weekends off. There's no child protection group. There's no OSHA. So you can get a lot done. And that's what drives me crazy when authoritarians like Paul Krugman and other economists say they marvel at what China's able to do. This is incredible. They built this whole Olympic stadium for Beijing in a week. It's like, well, yes, they were able to do that. When you have basically slave labor with no opposition, with no freedoms, you can build the bird's nest in Beijing in record time.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do as a country when you weld people into their homes when they get sick and you kidnap them overnight for insulting their police.
And the authoritarians like John Kerry and Paul Krugman are never the ones who will be conscripted to the labor. And that's why when people were like, Bernie Sanders is a communist, I would always say he's not a communist. He is a Communist Party leader. Because at the height of the Soviet Union's misery, there was never a shortage of vodka or caviar. And that is what John Kerry and Paul Krugman and all these folks are. They are never the working class 9-year-old girl who was forced in the labor mines. They are the party leaders that show up in big fancy cars and have a toast.
Remember when Maduro ate the empanada on TV? You remember that in Venezuela? His nation is starving to death.
Oh, yeah.
And he's still very plump.
Yeah.
And while he's talking, he just reaches into a drawer in his desk and pulls out an empanada and takes a bite of it. And I'm just like, dude, you couldn't wait 10 minutes?
Yeah.
He had to eat an empanada while his nation's starving.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. When I was in Venezuela, you know what I saw? How a command economy functions, very similarly to what you were saying about China. In order to make jobs, they just say, make it a job. So I went to go buy a cell phone. And there was like 6 different desks you had to go to. I walk and talk to one guy. It's the acquisitions department. I got to tell him what I'm looking for, and he explains to me, sends me over to the supply desk. I had to go to each individual person. You want to pick out your plan? You got to go to the person who helps you pick out the plan. Then you got to go to the person who actually goes and gets the card for you. Then you got to go to the person who helps you pick out a phone. Then you got to go to the person who actually gets the phone. They made fake jobs for the sake of having jobs. Whereas in the U.S., you walk into the phone store, this person walks up to you and say, I'd like a phone. No problem. They pull it up, they punch in the number, take your card, swipe it, you're good to go. Yeah. For the sake of having jobs, they just make everything worse.
Oh, that's because a private company in the United States wants to cut down on overhead, so they don't hire superfluously, but the government can just accrue tax dollars to pay for nonsense. And then they work for me now.
But it's not just about tax dollars, because it's communism or whatever. They're just basically like, we want everyone to be working. Idle hands, the devil's playground or whatever. Yeah. So make them work, make jobs. And so I'm like, why did it take me 3 hours to buy this phone?
Wow.
And the phone barely worked.
Yeah.
I went to the mall. The mall was dead. It's like all the stores are closed. Well, they can't just mandate. You can mandate a job for a company that's a necessity. People need cell phones. This technology is important for people to work and for the economy to grow. So that was in spite of what the government was doing. Yeah. At a mall where small businesses are supposed to flourish and experiment and make products, they couldn't. They couldn't do it because people didn't have the resources. Now, the craziest thing, these photos from Venezuela of the Bolivar, I think it's the Bolivar Fuerte now, their currency, because they had the Bolivar.
The $1 billion bill, notes. Right?
They had the Bolivar first. Then they were like, we're going to change this to the Bolivar Fuerte. And then they launched that, and now there's videos of just people shoveling it into the trash. Yeah, it's like garbage bags full of money, and it's like more useful as toilet paper than anything else.
Devastating.
Venezuela will always fascinate me. I always have to talk about energy. It's what I do for a living. But they are the country with the world's largest oil reserves, proven oil reserves. Venezuela. Yes. They went from one of the world leaders in oil to now there's roughly a week wait to fill up your car with gas. And you say how Milton Friedman used to joke that if the federal government were in charge of the Sahara Desert, they'd eventually run out of sand. Right, was his favorite joke. And this is the country with the largest oil reserves cannot produce oil anymore.
It seems as though it's intentional by the CIA because they don't want to use OPEC dollars. They've been staunchly anti-military industrial complex and we're going to destroy your economy. Suffer.
Maybe, dude.
Yeah, they're one of the targets. Yeah. Venezuela.
But Venezuela can mine can pull the oil out of the ground. It's like they don't have the technology or the machines. But they've been sanctioned.
They couldn't get I heard they couldn't get toilet paper. I was never there. And then they made a villain out of their leader. Where does toilet paper come from? CIA stuff.
The CIA makes the toilet paper?
No, they just the U.S. government sanctioned Venezuela.
So Venezuela needs to, if they were a capitalist economy, they do a really well.
If they joined us, if they simply joined the military industrial complex.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying if Venezuela allowed small businesses to grow and flourish, and they didn't mandate ridiculous garbage jobs, maybe they'd have their own toilet paper and wouldn't be worried about the sanctions. Maybe they would then have the infrastructure and the capability of producing machines that could harvest the oil and the petroleum and refine it.
But they're kind of a small country, and they're a jungle country too, so they don't have a lot of the resources that
a jungle country?
Yeah, there's a lot of jungle in Venezuela.
So they need to develop it. The problem is they're a mismanaged command economy where an overweight man eats an empanada on TV while his nation is starving.
And the CIA wants him gone.
I don't look, man.
Oh yeah.
If my neighbor was mad at me and he was blocking the road to my house or whatever, and there were still tons of land on my property and a capability of taking care of myself, there's a certain point where you got to be like, well, I shouldn't have bought a property with no easement for the road. Venezuela has the ability. The problem is they are a horribly mismanaged country. Maduro was a bus driver. Hugo Chavez was like, we want a working person to be in charge. So this bus driver is going to be the president from now on.
Welcome to the popularity contest.
And didn't Venezuela dissolve their Congress or something?
I mean, Venezuela before Hugo Chavez came into power was by far the wealthiest country in Latin America and by far the most educated. I mean, they were almost on par with the United States in terms of GDP, in terms of prosperity. So to watch their decline under someone who was elected under a lot of the same rhetoric we hear, fair share, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. When I'm in charge, we're going to have a blah, blah, blah. And people, going back to one of the earlier conversations, people vote for their own interests. And if you make their interest taking other people's prosperity, wealth, absolving your debt, people are going to vote for that.
Oh, it's possible because Bush
and that's what happened.
Bush hated Chavez,
Bush
Jr. and just because he used military-industrial complex all the way. They wanted Venezuela's oil, so maybe Maduro was kind of like a CIA plant. They got him in, and now they're villainizing him to make. They let him ruin the country. Yeah. Now they're like, we got to get him out and put another guy in that's even more sympathetic to us.
This is all conspiracy level stuff.
Yeah, but it's also
we talk about the CIA and their involvement, and we just. We're never going to know. We understand the tales of the economic hitmen.
Yeah,
we know about all that stuff. But the fact of the matter remains, I have been to Venezuela. I've literally seen how awfully managed the country is. I have seen other journalists go there and go to Potemkin supermarkets and lie about the food they have. Luke went there. He went to a random neighborhood market. He's like, it's empty. He traveled around and saw how bad it was. And these other journalists come out with these videos where they're like, look at all this glorious food in Venezuela. And it's like, clearly that's not true. I had to flee the country rather quickly because I got accused of being a spy simply for being there and showing people what was really going on. There were protests. Students were revolting. It was bad. Caracas at the time was the murder capital of the world. This is a problem of leadership. And I get it. Maybe there's the CIA doing everything in their power to stop them. But listen, if they're a jungle nation, maybe they should start developing parts of their country. It used to be that people would go out with a saw and just chop trees down and develop land. Then we got machinery. Maybe they can't get access to a lot of these things, but it doesn't explain why they have ridiculous jobs at ridiculous companies, why they can't start small businesses, why they can't produce food, and they have all of this oil they don't know how to use properly. Now, apparently oil is cheap for the people there, but it's really hard to get because they're horribly mismanaged.
Well, when you're shoveling your currency into the fireplace, it doesn't matter if it's cheap.
Right.
I mean, if it costs 45 cents a gallon, you say, well, that's cheap. But if hyperinflation makes your currency useless, well, then 45 cents is as expensive as $4.
And also, hyperinflation is obviously their fault. It is the fault of their own country.
Yeah, they're reacting.
So if I'm not going to call it reacting, it's mismanagement, bro. Well, communists don't. It doesn't work. Too. Now I'll tell you this: China certainly figured it out, but look at what China does with their capitalistic enterprises. Yeah. Venezuela doesn't do that. They have a command economy. Maybe they'd learn if they just looked at what China was doing and they could make their pseudo-communism work. But I guess that wouldn't really be communism.
They're so tiny. That's their problem. They're kind of a satellite state.
I feel like it's not an excuse for a country to be like, but America is mean to us. It's like, so you have to, like, you're responsible for yourself, man. You can't complain that someone else won't send you toilet paper.
I'm curious to see what happens with China as their crackdown on Hong Kong continues, because it is a huge economic engine. It's a world economic engine, a financial hub. They're really cracking down hard on Hong Kong. And if Hong Kong is unable to compete on a financial world level in freedom, I wonder what that does to the overall Chinese economy. I mean, like taking over Hong Kong hard has been a 20-year plan since the turnover, which I think was like January 1st, 2000, right? Wasn't it right at the beginning of the millennial was when the UK gave up Hong Kong? I don't remember the exact date.
And there was like a certain time frame.
There was a certain time frame, and here we are 20 years later, and basically I'm sure the Biden administration would recognize the word on the street is for the expats is don't stay in Hong Kong. Like,
it's kind of crazy.
Taiwan's next.
Go home.
Hong Kong was a British colony, and then they were like, after 100 years, I think it was, we're going to give it back to China. China's like, we're going to take Hong Kong, but we're not going to infringe on some of their sovereignty. Although they did by extraditing criminals to the Chinese courts. But Hong Kong's never supposed to be independent. That was never part of the deal. So this whole like free Hong Kong thing is not what was ever part of the global plan. The U.S. is pushing it right now because I think a lot of Americans would love to see a independent Hong Kong state. But the idea was the British give it to the Chinese, terrifying as it is. That was the plan. Are we gonna back out on that?
What year do we live in?
2021.
Where thank you. Where a country, the UK, can be like, we're going to give the people of this, small island.
It's still a colonization
city,
plan,
or
man.
peninsula city.
They still have Australia and Canada, Britain. It's crazy.
But what I'm saying is, like, what would happen right now if the UK was like, we're going to give America to Canada? We'd be like, shut your mouth. That's just not happening.
Yeah.
And so what really happens is China sends in spies and propagandists and military, and they conquered Hong Kong. They did. They install their people. They remove anyone who opposes them. And now they're just eroding away at the institutions, and Hong Kong will be taken over at the administrative level. That's how
it's
they do
freakish, and I can't see. I mean, I feel justice at the core of my soul, and I feel like justice is to deliver Hong Kong to the Chinese, as was planned.
How is that
because
justice?
That was part of the contract.
The people of Hong Kong didn't agree to that contract.
No, people 100 years ago agreed to it.
Yeah, well,
they're all gone. It's crazy system. I mean, do we break the contract? I don't think we have to stick to the contract. They did the Balfour Declaration. I think it was post World War I. Was like, hey, Arabs, since you betrayed the Ottomans and helped us win World War I, the British and the French were like, we're gonna give you the land of where now Israel is. And then at the end of World War I, they reneged on that contract and said, no, Arabs, we're not going to give it to you. They created the Israeli state. And that's where all this tension came from. The Arabs were like, we were supposed to have that. It was a contract.
Yeah, I think giving people their freedom is always a good thing, but returning people to an evil regime is not. And so to say, like, we're going to give Hong Kong its independence from the crown, I mean, we got our independence from the crown. I would be in favor of that. But that would be like America saying, and now we're going to give Puerto Rico to Cuba. And right? It's like, well, because you speak the same language and you're very close to each other. I'm like, well, wait a second. Why are you sacrificing us as your people? And I feel like the British they were their people, and they turned them over, to the communists. And I mean, we fought the whole Eastern bloc of Europe was to prevent the Soviet Union from infringing more and more in there. Because we realized how evil it was, and now it's like, you can just take it. As well, take the Czech Republic. It's all good. You got take Austria. You guys speak the same language anyway.
Isn't it really funny that 2 world wars and a Cold War were fought for the express purpose of stopping one consolidated power taking over Europe, and then finally they're just like, maybe we should just do it anyway. Yeah. And then the European Union comes in, and there you go.
Yeah, exactly. And now we're teaching all our kids Mandarin in class because we think it's fun. It's like, great. We'll just learn the language of your conquering overlords.
Hey, get ready for assimilation. Yeah. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.